Good evening. Thank you for sharing this moment with us and for being here for the very first public screening of this documentary. So we are so pleased that you are here, and we have an illustrious panel here. My name is Deborah Sunea Moore, and I'm the Chief Program Officer at Chautauqua, and it is just such a joy to have all of you here. We are going to have a little open time of Q&A, but let me start by introducing our panelists this evening. Of course, we have our president, Michael Hill. We have our Michael I. Rudell, Artistic Director of Literary Arts, author Kwame Alexander. And we have Chief Executive Officer of Black Robin Media and our executive producer of this documentary, Lynn Robinson. Now, you have these handy pads of paper and your little Chautauqua pencil in your gift bag. So if you have questions, we ask that you start to write those down now. And my colleague, Jill McCormick. Jill, say hello. Our Director of Communications at Chautauqua, she will come around and collect those from you. You just need to raise your hand or wave your paper, and she will get those. And I just wanted to acknowledge one other person. You were introduced to Amanda Gates, our Chautauqua Symphony Orchestra member, but I wanted to say she is also a mother of one of the young musicians in the documentary, Amanda. So as you think of any questions you have tonight, I wanted to start the conversation with you, Michael. And in many films and many documentaries, there is an origin story. And will you share with us what you feel the origin story is for this film?
Well, first of all, good evening and thank you for being here. Thanks, Scott, for hosting us, and to our friends at WHRO, and to our friend Jane, who has been hosting my husband Peter and me, so thanks for giving us a place to stay as well. This is the culmination in a lot of ways of a 5-year story. Paula Kerger, who is the CEO of PBS, was on our stage early in my tenure as a speaker, which Kwame knows well, which draws you in, as you also know. And starting about 4 or 5 years ago, after that talk, Paula said, well, come see me in the DC region and let's just connect again. And she was so taken by Chautauqua, and she said, you know, in many ways, Chautauqua does what we do at PBS. We try to lift up stories and help people in this country understand what they're wrestling with, what they're seeing, and we should do something together. Well, that took about 4 years of germination. We were coming up on our 150th anniversary, and Paula said, well, this seems like the time to do something. What if we tell the story of Chautauqua? I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know what it's going to result in, but are you willing to enter that story? So really a conversation that starts on our stage, 5 years later shows up in this incredible experience, and really fun to watch this guy who didn't know he was the start of the piece. But so that's the origin story, and here we are 5 years later.
Thank you, Michael. So Kwame, being one of our newest artistic directors at Chautauqua, you can see this documentary features the arts as a way to build bridges across differences. And how does that affect your work at Chautauqua, and how does that affect how you're planning the next summer of your work?
Great question. First of all, Lynn, amazing job. Well done, you and your team. Kudos. Kudos. You know, what I was struck by in the documentary is how you and Michael and the Chautauqua team, you have done a phenomenal job of being able to make sure that the stages, the departments, the directors, that they represent the kind of America that really exists. To see Denise Graves and to see Jade and to see Anthony Mackie and to see Misty Copeland and to see this, what people, I guess, would call representation, is a testament to what you all, have talked about and have done. And I believe that that is a first step. What we need now is that we've got to make sure that the audiences reflect the kind of America that we want, that we live in. And that is a huge undertaking, but I believe it starts with the arts. I believe the arts has the capacity to build community. And so I think you've taken that first leap and you've done it like you went in gangbusters and you pulled it off. And now this next step to make sure the audiences, when you look around here, this is an example of a Chautauquan audience, and it's wonderful. But we have to bring more people to the dinner table. And I think the arts are going to help us do that.
Thank you, Kwame. It feels like this documentary is really focusing on what Chautauqua was meant to be and what we are still aspiring to be. And this woman here, now friend, has helped us set the table, I hope, for the next 150 years. So Lynn, thank you for this incredible work. And I will just ask you, before we get to the audience questions, I can't imagine the parts of the process that I have not even seen. Would you just share with us a few highlights of some joys and challenges of what you experienced creating this work?
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you all for coming today and for sharing in this moment, this first screening with me and our team. This was really, really just a wonderful project to work on, and I am so honored personally to have been tasked with the challenge, so to speak. But I think, as Kwame will appreciate this, that, storytelling is just something that I'm passionate about doing. I'm not an author, but the art of telling a story, whether it's 30 seconds or 2 hours or somewhere in between, it all, is just a pleasure to do. And I think, so one of the joys of doing that is that craft. Let me begin with that. And this was an incredible story to tell. I love the arts. I am a woman of faith, and education is a passion. And so, Chautauqua and what Chautauqua means and stands for, and the pillars of Chautauqua are something meaningful to me. I also love jazz, so, I really could not go wrong with an assignment like this, I have to say. So again, thank you. Some of the joys of really getting to know and understand Chautauqua, its history. I had heard about it. I grew up in Pittsburgh. I haven't lived there in many years, but I grew up there, and so it's not far from Chautauqua. And I'd heard about it, in my youth, but had never been. And so really to get to understand and to know it, and the time that I did spend there, and I do want to come back and be part of that audience that Kwame speaks about and bring people with us, and those that are on my team felt the same way. So learning about Chautauqua and meeting all of you folks and many others who were working, with us behind the scenes and new friendships, I think was one of the great things that I really, brought from this experience. Yes, there are challenges. There are, as you can imagine, challenges bringing groups together. You've got Chautauqua Institution, you've got PBS, and you've got Jazz at Lincoln Center, and all the negotiations that happen. Projects always start out with, yeah, everybody's on board, it's all good, it's all taken care of, no problem. Fast forward 8 months later of negotiations and lawyers and all that good stuff getting in the mix, and when we're just ready to tell stories. But again, all good. I think, from a creative standpoint and the storytelling standpoint, the challenges were twofold. One, how to honor both, again, the story of Chautauqua in 150 years in an hour, and what you highlight, because you obviously cannot tell it all. You can't even come close. as well as telling the story of All Rise and using that as the spine or the thread to tell the Chautauqua story, frankly, and how that was going to come together, what were those touch points where they would meet and diverge, and keeping it flowing, I think, was definitely a challenge. And then the other is to really focus on what Chautauqua does so well, is this open discourse and bringing together these stories that speak to the democracy, not only in the arts that are important to create, but democracy for this country and in this time. And to do that, in a way in which trying to give space for different opinions and different thoughts, and honor that, but respectfully as well, to tell truth, but also know that the truth is different sometimes for different people. And again, honoring that and telling the truth regardless. But also trying to find things that I think were evergreen. So we talk about this being 150 years. There are certain stories that we were dealing with 150 years ago, shortly after the Civil War, and before that for centuries and generations, and that we're still dealing with now. And so trying to really look at some of those in a way, again, that is thoughtful and respectful, and shows the evolution of these issues.
Thank you. So thank you again. Yes. We would love to hear your questions, and if you have any in writing for Jill, you can wave it around. But if you also just want to raise your hand, I will repeat your question for everyone to hear. But let me just pause to see who might be the first brave soul to pose something to Lynn or Kwame or Michael about what you saw today and what you're wondering. You can start over there. If you stand up, there we go. Well, we don't want you to imagine, we want you to come. So his question was, as an artist, what is it like to be around all that creativity and the vibe of Chautauqua? Kwame, would you like to start with that?
It is otherworldly exciting, and it's the sole reason why I'm there. I wasn't able to articulate it, but I felt something being on those grounds for a day and a half, so much so that I, requested that I be allowed to stay for another day and a half. This was in the summer of 2023. And so I found myself really moved by the feeling that I got from interacting and engaging with people. And what I've come to understand and realize is that, and we saw it in the documentary, Chautauqua has figured out how to acknowledge the humanity of everyone. You can, as a symbol of that acknowledgement, you can look at the Phyllis Wheatley plaque. That's an acknowledgement of our history, no matter how sordid and tragic it may be. Chautauqua has figured out how to appreciate the humanity of all of us. You can look at the documentary. You saw, I don't know if you saw it, but you saw Michael, when Michael was being interviewed in that beautiful green blazer. We noticed, we saw it, Peter picked that out.
His eyes popped beautifully.
Peter picked that out. But we saw the Rebecca Kincaid painting of the black girl on a bicycle. Like, that's a statement. Chautauqua understands how to appreciate. So what's gonna keep me coming back is the next step, and that's the hardest. And that's how does Chautauqua begin to advocate and act on that acknowledgement and appreciation of the humanity of all artists, of all people. When Chautauqua figures that out, it's going to be life-giving and life-saving.
You may have noticed something about Kwame. It's inspire, challenge. Inspire, challenge. Thank you. So the next question, I think this is for Lynn. So someone has asked, what did you have to leave out of the documentary that made you sad or frustrated that you couldn't include?
Wow. As you can imagine, there's a lot. Besides, I think, there's, of course, deeper aspects of the story, of the stories that you saw. Let me start with that. There was, more information, great sound bites, great interviews, that sort of thing, that just dig a little bit deeper. But I think one of the overall stories that we weren't able to fit in that would have fit nicely, but just for timing and some other reasons and purposes really was delving a bit deeper into, I think, the freedom of the press. And the Chautauqua Daily, which is a newspaper there, has also a history of not only telling stories from a variety of different perspectives, major stories that have happened around the country and in our history and in the world, but it's also been a training ground for a number of different journalists who have started their careers there, including Nancy Gibbs, who you heard speak, who was the former editor-in-chief of Time, Almer Latour, who was, the publisher of the Wall Street Journal. There's a number of folks over the years who have written there, and even beginning with Ida Tarbell. I don't know if you're familiar with the story and history of her, the famous muckraker, from the 19th century. And there's just a number of folks where it really does have these great stories about the Chautauqua Daily. I would have loved to have been able to include that, I think, in there as well. That would have been a lot of fun. So, maybe that's a part two. There's other, aspects of the arts that for purposes, truthfully, rights and clearances, certain performances, certain performers, certain, lectures and things of that nature, lots of familiar names that you would know and stories that you don't know. I would have loved to have told that story. And just, some other hidden gems, I think, that people would not have known or realized that have happened at Chautauqua that we just couldn't fit in. But they're, it really is amazing. As Kwame said, it's you feel it. When you visit on the grounds, you feel a spirit there that is just really indescribable until you go. But then just the history itself as well, for somebody who loves history. There were plenty of stories that we weren't able to include in an hour, but that's always the case, right?
Thank you, Lynn, and thank you for these questions. So, Michael, you and I might be able to share the next one, but I'm going to ask you first. So, this person says, what kind of events or programs did you say no to? What proposals for programs seemed like they might be problematic? Anything to share there?
Well, so the big joke at Chautauqua was we say no to nothing. So our program team would tell you that we have a problem of saying a perpetual yes to things. Look, and I love the way, Lynn, that you ended the piece, which was, after 150 years, Chautauqua is still running, but it's not running away. Chautauqua strives to unpack the really difficult things that are happening in the country. And so you saw us, you saw Lynn sharing our APIA program, the Abrahamic program for young adults, bringing young people across the Abrahamic traditions to talk about the similarities and differences between Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. We spent hours in anticipation of this summer asking what it would look like knowing what was happening in Israel and Palestine to talk about that topic. We still ask those questions. So there are days I wish we said no to more, but that's the magic of the place. I mean, when Deborah said, Kwame inspires and pushes, right? I mean, that's the yin and the yang of the place, which is, it is so deeply human. We know that we're nowhere close to this utopian vision where everyone belongs and everyone can come and bring their best thoughts. But I think through that brokenness and that humanity, it's an institution that keeps trying, and when it falls, it gets up as quick as it can. And so I don't know what we say no to, but I know that we wrestle with the frailties of humanity all summer.
Thank you. Well, I say no to a lot, but that's part of my job, to say no to a lot and yes to a lot. And I will share, continuing the types of conversations we have where we make those decisions. The types of things that we say no to are a speaker or a program that the intention might be to purposefully incite or elicit disagreement, where the type of person that might speak in a certain way to cause an argument versus to come into dialogue, if that makes sense, right? So it's not so much about a certain topic or the content, but about the attitude with which you go at it. Yeah. And so we're looking for the type of person that will invite dialogue and invite conversation versus someone that will purposely want to have an inflammatory reaction. I hope that makes sense. And in my 11 years there, I can also think of things that I first said no to, then said yes to, which I think shows how Chautauqua has evolved. So even though I'm a classical musician, I like some hip hop music. And about 10 years ago, there were several groups where I thought, I think I have to say no. I think Chautauqua was not ready for this. And then after COVID, it kind of felt like we could do anything. And we had the Roots for the first time at Chautauqua. We had, and they were incredible. And so as the world changes, it feels like we can keep pushing Chautauqua to evolve with the world, maybe a little slower than some parts of the world. But as long as we keep pushing to evolve ourselves, I think some no's can turn into yeses. So that's something that I find is exciting about trying to shape us. Now, I see another question coming our way, and I see one right there. So I think we have time for just a few more. Let's see if we can reach. We can do it, Jill. All right, this is going to be a live reading of the question. I hope there's good penmanship. Let's see. Yes, okay. Ooh, it's a long one. We're going to do it. Given that we live in a country and a world in which attention spans seem to be growing increasingly shorter, and our culture, politics, and media are fragmenting into narrower channels, how is Chautauqua adapting to remain relevant and true to its mission of broadening minds and inspiring unity? Woo! All right.
Deborah?
Yes. So who would like to go with that first? Michael?
Well, so I'll tee it up, but then I'm going to call on Kwame because he has recently been invited to help us with this, right? So, I mean, Kwame, you saw in a part of the piece, Kwame at the lectern was Kwame giving a 1045 lecture. And little did we know then it would be Kwame becoming a part of our team and pushing us on this. We wrestle with this at Chautauqua. Even when I came almost 9 years ago, folks said, you know, we're in the area of the TED Talk. For those that know Chautauqua, we do a 45-minute to an hour lecture and 45-minute questions. And they said, scale it back, go to the sound bites. We have consistently said no. I don't believe human beings can only process in sound bites, but it's countercultural. Folks that come to Chautauqua dive deep into long form. What I would say we have to adapt to, and Kwame, you teed this up, and this is work you're doing, particularly in the literary arts, is how do we more deeply reflect what's happening in society? Chautauqua has had a frame for that, but we, and I think you saw many of these folks in the piece, we have started to invite people who are pushing us a lot more to adapt to embrace where society is more than we ever have. And Kwame's certainly one of them that has said, yes, and there's more to do. So how would you answer how we're thinking about that from your viewpoint?
Yes.
And?
I brought my teenager, Samaya, to Chautauqua this summer. And the first day, she said, "Dad, this place is weird." Where am I? And on day 4, she said, sort of casually, "I can see bringing my family here." I think you're already, to answer the question, from a programmatic standpoint, you're already doing it. My position is change nothing. I feel like you're going forward. You're running toward it. I feel like you're making those decisions. So I think from a programmatic standpoint, you're doing the thing that needs to be done. I think what we got to figure out, because I brought my niece there this summer, and Dolly, and she's 22, 23. And what we've got to run toward, what we got to figure out now is how do we make sure that she feels that same inspiration that her famous author uncle feels. Again, it goes to, we figured out how to appreciate it, and so now we gotta figure out how to act on that and make sure everyone feels that. So I feel like we're doing a heavy lift, Michael. We just have a heavier lift to do. And I feel like with the two of you, they got the right people, because you have not shied away from anything. To your point, you haven't said no to running towards it.
So that leads into our next question, where someone has asked about what do we do for K through 12 students and children. So here Kwame is talking about a young person. By the way, at Chautauqua, like 40 is young. You'll feel awesome there. But someone is asking about students, right? Young people year-round. And so I'll take this one because I'm so happy to hear this question. About 10 years ago, we started an arts education department that worked with arts education in Chautauqua County and surrounding counties. And 10 years later, we're actually in about 23 school districts. We have programs such as opera in the schools. We have a young playwrights program that has 3 different phases in the schools. We have programs that are focused not only on theater and music, but also on literary arts. And we provide direct programming for students, but also professional development for the teachers. And so we have those 2 tracks because we always want to be thinking of, well, if Suzanne, our director of education, or Stephanie, our teaching artist, if they aren't in the school on Tuesday, have we left the teachers with something that they can be doing with students? And this is actually one of the reasons I was so excited about our now collaboration with Kwame, because he's not only, oh, wait, did I say Emmy Award-winning producing director? I think I didn't say that. But, you know, he is not only that, but perhaps more importantly, he is someone that works with students in professional development with teachers and has been devoted to that for his life. And that's how you participate and evolve society where you are, right? So even though you see here that Chautauqua was founded on education and lifelong learning, one of the things that, of course, one of the many things that we couldn't cover is what we currently do in the schools, and I invite you to learn more about that because we're really proud of that work. So thanks for asking. We have a final question here that I'm going to ask all 3 of you to answer. So Lynn, why don't we start with you, and we'll just go right down the line. It's a 2-word question. Why Chautauqua? is what one of our listeners wrote here. So, Lynn, you get the least time to prepare. Why Chautauqua, in whatever way you'd like to answer that?
Why not?
Oh, really? That was beautiful. Can we give a qualifier, a preface to the answer, or I just got to say the 2 words?
No, absolutely. You can expand. The question was only 2 words, but Lynn might want more time. I'm coming back to you, Lynn. You don't get out of it that easily.
We only got 2 words.
Oh no, the question was 2 words. Okay, Lynn, go for it. Why Chautauqua? As you made this documentary, I'm sure you were thinking probably most of the time about mission, about aspiration, about the why. And having visited Chautauqua now for the first time and produced this, what's the reason for being of Chautauqua?
That's one of those interesting questions, because I would love to have known what really was going through the founder's head when they founded Chautauqua, and if they saw, a certain vision beyond it. We know that it was, a learning exercise, so to speak, for Sunday school, teachers, but the timing, as we were putting this story together, and the timing coming, right after Reconstruction, or the beginning of Reconstruction, right after the Civil War, I should say, at this time of growth in our country, and of course we unfortunately know what came after that, but shortly thereafter, but at the time that Chautauqua was founded, I'd like to think that the idea was this new vision of what America, the promise of America for all people. Obviously, there are some qualifiers with that, but let's just hope that that was the initial thought, like I said, coming out of the Civil War and the timing that it was. I think why it has carried on as long as it has is all the reasons that you guys have talked about here. Trying to embrace the difficult conversations, not saying no. Trying different arts, education, discussions about faith, interfaith, those who do not subscribe to a faith, but all are welcome. I think just being able to convene these conversations in a beautiful setting, of course, but like I said, there's a real spirit there that is really hard to describe unless you go. And there's something just very welcoming about, I think, Chautauqua and the people that are there, and what you're trying to accomplish. So that's what I would say. Why?
Thank you, Lynn. And I just want to point out that I did hear you say a few minutes ago that you want to be coming back to Chautauqua. So we're gonna remember that.
I will be coming back. Yes, no, definitely, I will come back. And I have to say that all of our team, none of us had been there. And we all kind of, different people had different experiences, and everybody came back, and I have to, it was interesting. One of our producers loves Lucille Ball, and she grew up in, nearby, and she went off on her own one day and went to the museum and just enjoyed herself. And another one, of our producers got up at 6 o'clock in the morning and did the, paddle boarding and the kayaking, and just, was like, I just have never experienced this. And she wants to bring her mother. And both of our moms are octogenarians who read, the different, speakers and the platform, and they all want to come. And it is exactly what you're describing. Just, I think, getting it sounds silly to say getting the word out, because clearly the word has been out for quite a long time, but reaching different audiences and explaining and showing what's there. I think it really is one of those places, if you build it, they will come, and it's fascinating.
Thank you, Lynn. So, Kwame, why Chautauqua? Why now for you?
Well, he was due on November the 17th, and he was born on July 11th. So he was 4 months premature, and I was in the Red Barn when I got the call, and I called a woman who drove Uber, and she drove me to the Buffalo airport, and I flew down to Inova Children's Hospital in Fairfax, and he could fit in my hand. That's how small he was. He came home on January the 3rd, and he's 11 pounds. And he's got these fat legs, and he's got a 4-head. Actually, his head's so big, he's got a 5-head. and he's waving, and he's smiling, and yawning. And sometimes I think he looks like me. And why Chautauqua? Because I want him to be able to sit on Bester Plaza with me in a stroller, and we can eat ice cream. Why Chautauqua? I want him to be able to spend the summer with Sean's grandson and hang out with his cousins. Why Chautauqua? Because I want him to be able to leave the house and see me on the front porch and get on his bike and go to children's school. Why Chautauqua? I mean, the 2 words I give you, my grandson.
So in addition to these 2 amazing humans who just answered that for us, I get to sit next to my boss, colleague, and friend, Michael. We've been through a lot of years together. And so in your, are we on 8? 9. In your 9th year at Chautauqua, why Chautauqua?
First of all, how do I get put after Kwame Alexander?
Sorry, I was trying to give you a little
We're going
buffer
to do
there.
other panel discussions, and I'm not sitting here. I'm not doing that next time.
I'm glad I went first.
Man can pull out poetry at the heartbeat and then talks about his grandson. So thanks, appreciate that. I'll go nerdier than the hard answer. We got. I don't know many people in our lives right now that don't have people that they love who don't feel uncertain and scared in this country. And regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum, I think we're in a nation that's looking for answers and can't figure out where to turn. I feel blessed to be at an institution that's an agitator, that is trying to set the stage for people to figure out what those answers are. And there are too few places that invite you to bring your brokenness and your fear into conversation with someone who is differently broken and differently afraid, in the hopes that if you open your heart enough to ask the question, knowing that the person next to you may feel diametrically opposed to you, maybe, just maybe, the country's got a shot. That's what I think we wake up every day trying to program around and trying to make space for. And it's one of the few things that give me hope in a country that feels too afraid right now.
Well, that sounds like poetry to me. Friends, please know about Chautauqua, you are welcome. That's what we hope you leave with, that you are welcome. We hope you become a part of this journey. Whether you have not been to Chautauqua and this is something you were just interested in finding more about, we hope to see you there. If you have come to Chautauqua for many more years than any of us have been there, we look forward to you returning. We have thanks to give tonight. I'd like to thank Virginia Wesleyan University, the Good Center, WHRO Public Media, especially Presidents Miller and Schmidt, and also Amy Hauk. I don't know if we've seen you tonight. Where are you, Amy? There you are. Thank you, Amy. And of course, our shared friend, Jane Batten. Thank you so much for coming with friends. We do hope to see you all again, be it here or be it in Chautauqua. Please leave with your swag bag, which has some information on how to visit. And thank you for your time and for sharing this moment in history with us.